In the shadowed corners of medieval churches, on ceiling bosses and stone pillars, a strange and persistent face stares back through the centuries. It is a human face, almost always male, but it is not entirely human. It is a thing of leaf and vine, a face made of foliage, or a face from which foliage violently erupts. We have given it a modern name, the Green Man, and imagined it as a ghost of paganism, a secret god hiding in plain sight. Nowhere does this ghost feel more present than in the ruins of chapels built by the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. These warrior monks, shrouded in power and mystery, were guardians of the pilgrim roads, bankers to kings, and masters of a vast European network. They were the image of Christian piety and martial strength. And then, in one swift, brutal stroke, they were gone. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, they were arrested en masse, their wealth seized, their reputation destroyed. They were accused of heresy, idolatry, and devil worship, and after years of horrific torture, the order was dissolved. Its last Grand Master burned at the stake. They left behind a legend of conspiracy, lost treasure, and forbidden knowledge. But they also left their churches, and in the stones of those churches, the faces remain. What are these wild, unsettling visages doing in the holy places of a Christian military order? Are they a simple decoration? Or are they a clue, a remnant of a secret belief that Christianity could never fully erase? Tonight, we descend into the shadows of history to find the truth behind the pagan faces in Templar chapels. Welcome to the Candlelight Historian. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland is where the story usually begins. Built in the mid-15th century, it is not so much a building as it is a forest of stone, a dizzying, overwhelming profusion of carvings. And among them, the Green Man is not just present, he is dominant. While a typical church might have a few foliate heads, Rosslyn is home to over 100. They are everywhere, suggesting they were absolutely central to the chapel's meaning. They are not relegated to obscure corners, but appear in positions of great prominence, crowning pillars, peering out from between carvings of angels and woven into the intricate string courses of foliage that surround the windows. One of the most pointed examples is in the Lady Chapel, where a disgorging head is carved on a boss right next to a scene of the Nativity, placing this wild face as a direct witness to the birth of Christ. The popular story, the one told in novels and whispered on tours, is that Rosslyn is a Templar treasure house. The myth claims that the chapel's founder, Sir William Sinclair, was the hereditary guardian of Templar secrets, and that Rosslyn was built to hide their knowledge, or perhaps even the Holy Grail itself. The sheer number of green men are seen as proof of this secret, a nod to an older pre-Christian faith the Templars secretly harbored. What makes the faces at Rosslyn truly unique and deeply unsettling is what appears to be a clear aging sequence. The carvings are not uniform. They seem to depict a full cycle of life and death. The sequence begins with a youthful, almost boyish face. It progresses through mature, bearded men in their prime, and it culminates in withered, skeletal faces, their flesh gone, but their forms still inextricably entwined with the living foliage that sprouts from their very bones. This transforms the Green Man from a static symbol into a dynamic entity with its own life cycle, played out across the fabric of the chapel. The green skeletons are particularly chilling, a macabre fusion of life and death that goes beyond a simple message of rebirth. They suggest a form of vegetative undeath, a horrifying cycle where growth and decay are one and the same. The chapel becomes a chronicle of this entity's existence, a stone testament to its passage from birth, through life, to a horrifying, ever-sprouting death. It's a perfect story for a dark and stormy night, but it is just that, A story. The historical record is clear. The foundation stone for Rosslyn Chapel was laid in 1446. The Knights Templar were officially and brutally suppressed by the Pope in 1312, over 130 years before work on Rosslyn even began. It is not a Templar preceptory. It is a 15th century collegiate church. The supposed link is a product of modern theories, powerful myths that have completely overwritten the documented history of the site. To complicate matters further, a major restoration in the 1860s was undertaken by an architect who was a known Freemason, making it highly probable that many carvings now seen as having Templar or Masonic symbolism were added or recarved then to suit 19th century traditions. To find the genuine connection between the Templars and the Green Man, we must leave the myths of Rosslyn behind and travel to sites with a direct documented link to the order. And what we find is far stranger and more ambiguous than any modern fantasy. Our first stop is St. Michael's Church in Garway, Herefordshire. This was a Templar preceptory founded around the year 1180. The original Norman chancel arch from the Templar foundation survives intact, and carved on that arch is one of the most unsettling figures in all of medieval art, a horned green man. It is a disgorging type, with vines emerging from its mouth, but its features are not quite human. Some have described it as a cat mask, noting its distinctly feline qualities. The presence of horns is an explicit and potent feature. Within a Christian framework, horns are the attribute of the demonic. But in a pre-Christian context, they recall nature deities like the Celtic Cernunnos, Lord of the Wild. A third, more obscure possibility is that they symbolize divine power, as in medieval depictions of Moses, who was described in the Vulgate Bible as having horns after descending from Mount Sinai. The ambiguity is profound, and it is located in an undisputed Templar context. The local folklore only deepens the mystery. The area is associated with tales of the 9 witches of Garway Hill and stories of fairies kidnapping mortals from near the church spring. The horned figure feels less like a carving and more like a genius loci, the spirit of the place, given form in stone. This was not just an English phenomenon. Foliate heads appear in the 11th century Templar churches in Jerusalem, suggesting the motif was familiar to the order from its very inception in the Holy Land. This points not to a suppressed British paganism, but perhaps to an Eastern or Byzantine motif the Templars helped to popularize in Europe. This idea is strengthened by the 11th century church at Neuvy-Saint-Sépulcre in France. Built by knights returning from pilgrimage to replicate the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, it is a direct echo of the Crusader experience. Its capitals are decorated with numerous foliate heads, including a profusion of beast heads and cat heads disgorging foliage, a direct echo of the feline mask at Garway. The recurrence of this beast-like variant is deeply suggestive, especially when one remembers the infamous accusations of cat and head worship leveled against the Templars during their trials. But just as important as where the Green Man appears is where he does not. The Templar preceptory at Temple Bruer in Lincolnshire was the second wealthiest Templar house in England, a major centre for administering the order's vast agricultural estates. It was a centre of immense power. Today only a single imposing tower remains, and despite extensive excavations, there is no documented evidence of any Green Man carvings at Temple Bruer. This silence is profound. If the Green Man were a central symbol of Templar belief, one would expect to find it here. Its absence suggests the motif was not a core part of their identity, but a choice made by local masons or patrons. The emptiness of Temple Bruer is a haunted one. After the Templars were arrested, locals seem to have filled the void they left with fear. The interior walls of the surviving tower are covered in centuries of graffiti, including numerous apotropaic symbols, protective marks like daisy wheels and pentangles scratched into the stone. These may be folk magic wards, carved to contain the evil the Templars were accused of practicing within those very walls. So what did this ambiguous symbol mean to the medieval mind? To understand, we must look at its different forms, which art historians have categorized into three primary and increasingly unsettling types. The first is the simple foliate head, where a face is composed of or covered by leaves. It can be tranquil, a spirit of the woodland, but it can also be uncanny. In some abstract examples, the carving appears at first glance to be mere foliage, with the face only becoming apparent upon closer inspection, creating the disturbing sensation of being watched by a hidden consciousness. The second, and most common, is the disgorging head. Here, branches and vines spew from an open mouth. The act itself is a paradox, suspended between creation and violence. Is the figure giving birth to the foliage, the creative word made manifest as life? Or is it being choked, its mouth pried open in a silent vegetative scream? The carvings often reflect this tension. Some faces are placid, while others are tormented, their lips pursed into a figure of eight, their teeth bared in a snarl. The third and most extreme variation is the bloodsucker head. Here, the foliage sprouts from every facial orifice, the nostrils, the ears, the corners of the eyes, even the tear ducts. The term captures its parasitic, invasive nature. It suggests a horrifying internal transformation, a deep-seated medieval anxiety about the integrity of the body and the corruption of the flesh, where a chthonic, vegetative force invades and consumes the body from within, while it is still seemingly alive. These disturbing images were not necessarily pagan. Scholars have proposed several compelling Christian interpretations. The most powerful is tied to the medieval legend of the True Cross, also known as the Quest of Seth. In this story, as Adam lay dying, he sent his son Seth to the gates of paradise to beg the archangel Michael for 3 seeds from the tree of life. Seth placed them under his father's tongue upon his death and burial. From Adam's mouth grew the trees that would eventually provide the wood for Christ's cross. In this reading, the green man is Adam. The foliage is not pagan vitality, but a profound symbol of salvation, new life for all mankind, springing directly from the sin and death of the first man. But a much darker Christian reading sees the figure as a warning against sin. The 8th century theologian Rabanus Maurus stated that leafy sprays symbolize the sins of the flesh and doomed men. The snarling demonic faces represent the mouth of hell, a gateway to damnation. The figure is not being reborn, but is being consumed by his own lusts, ensnared by the thorny vines of sin. Finally, some of the earliest examples are not living faces, but skulls with vegetation sprouting from empty eye sockets. These are a memento mori, a stark reminder of mortality, a visual sermon on the biblical injunction, "For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." How could such wild, grotesque, and ambiguous images exist within the sacred space of a church, alongside saints and angels? The medieval worldview was not as rigidly divided as our own. The masons who built these churches worked from a flexible decorative tradition, not always a strict theological program. They carved a menagerie of strange and wonderful hybrids. There are rare green women found in places like Ulm in Germany and Brioude, France, a possible forgotten consort or earth goddess figure. There are green beasts like the foliate lions and cats we see at Templar sites. Masons even pushed the motif to monstrous limits, carving 2 or 3-headed green men, figures where the nose forms the trunk of a tree, and sinister inversions where the mouth disgorges not plants, but snakes and dragons. These figures appeared on both solemn and humorous carvings, like the hidden misericords under choir seats. Their expression could shift from serene to demonic within the same building. This suggests that the green man's meaning was fluid. It could be a symbol of resurrection in one context, a warning against lust in another, and a simple, playful grotesque in a third. The wild man of the woods and the saints of heaven could occupy the same stone, reflecting a world where the boundaries between the sacred and the profane, the natural and the supernatural, were porous and uncertain. The popular idea that the green man is a surviving pagan god is an invention, a piece of 20th century folklore. The term itself was coined only in March 1939 by an amateur folklorist named Lady Raglan. Influenced by the anthropological theories of her day, particularly Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough, she connected the stone faces to folkloric figures like Jack in the Green and proposed they all represented a single, ancient fertility god. Her theory captured the public imagination, offering a tantalizing narrative of a secret, older religion persisting defiantly within the walls of the Christian establishment. But scholars now agree this theory is without foundation. There is no evidence for a pre-Christian deity in Britain that matches the green man's iconography. And the folkloric figures Lady Raglan used as evidence are not ancient survivals. The earliest records of Jack in the Green, for instance, date only to the late 18th century, making it impossible for him to be the origin of carvings made 500 years earlier. The true artistic lineage of the foliate head stretches back not to the British landscape, but to the classical art of the Roman Empire. The motif is a direct descendant of the leaf masks of late Roman art, which often represented nature gods like Oceanus. A 4th century silver salver from the Mildenhall treasure shows his face wreathed in seaweed, a clear classical prototype. This form was imported into England from France in the 12th century as part of the new Romanesque architectural style. So the green man is not the ghost of a dead religion. He is something more complex, a powerful visual form inherited from the pre-Christian Roman world that retained its wild, untamable energy. When it was absorbed into the Christian context, it was given new allegorical meanings, the resurrection of Adam, a warning against sin, but it never fully shed its primal strangeness. It is a perfect example of syncretism, a Christian shoot growing from ancient pagan roots. We are left then with a clash of worlds. On one side, there is the romantic interpretation, born in the 20th century, of a hidden pagan god, a symbol of a lost faith. It is a powerful narrative, embraced from the 1960s onward by New Age and neo-pagan movements, which canonized the green man as a primary male deity. This story is perfect for folk horror, suggesting a deep, chthonic truth that Christianity could never fully erase. On the other side is the scholarly consensus. The name is modern, the artistic origins are Roman, and the medieval meanings were Christian, albeit complex and varied. The truth is likely that the green man was a liminal figure, capable of holding multiple, even contradictory meanings at once. The mystery, perhaps, was the entire point. He is a face onto which the medieval and the modern viewer can project their deepest beliefs about life, death, nature, and the divine. The debate itself reveals more about our own worldviews than it does about any single objective medieval truth. So what does it all mean? What are these faces whispering from the sacred walls of Templar chapels? They are not, it seems, a sign of a secret, organized pagan cult at the heart of the order. The absence of the green man at a major site like Temple Bruer makes that clear. But the presence of the uniquely horned feline figure at Garway shows that this was not a meaningless decoration. It was a specific, deliberate choice. Perhaps the best way to understand it is through a lens of folk horror. The Templars were an international order, They were vectors of an ancient contagion. They encountered this ancient symbol in the East. They brought back more than relics and gold. They brought back a powerful chthonic genius loci from the Holy Land, and through their network of preceptories, seeded it in the fertile soil of the English countryside. In a place like Garway, steeped in its own local folklore of witches and fairies, this imported symbol may have merged with something older, something native to the soil, creating the unique, horned entity we see today. The carving at Garway is not a standard green man. It is the green man of that specific place, a portrait of the local spirit with whom the Templars made a pact. Their immense wealth could be seen as the result of this bargain, and their spectacular downfall a distorted reflection of their secret worship. The green man, in this telling, is an invasive species, an old-world god, now rooted deep in the British landscape, waiting in his forest of stone. The faces in the stone are therefore guardians, remnants, and warnings. They remind us that even in the most sacred of spaces, the wild world presses in. They are a testament to a medieval imagination that saw the holy and the horrifying not as opposites, but as two sides of the same coin. They are the faces of a mystery we can no longer fully solve, forever watching and forever silent, from the shadows. Thank you for joining me in the flickering candlelight. Please consider liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into the darkened corners of the past. Until next time, stay curious. This is the Candlelight Historian.